Nothing says happy marriage like pretending to listen to your wife's podcast recommendations while she texts someone else under the dinner table. I'm Pete Fenton, 38 years old, and apparently dumber than a box of rocks when it comes to reading the signs. Miranda had been acting strange for months. Late nights at book club, secretive phone calls, and a sudden interest in fitness that coincided with her joining CrossFit downtown. She'd come home sweaty and glowing, talking about her trainer, Greg, who was so motivating and really knew how to push her limits. I should have known right then. But I was busy fixing servers at Midwest Tech Solutions, coming home exhausted and trying to keep our marriage from feeling like a business transaction. Miranda worked in HR at Pinnacle Development, making twice what I did, and she never let me forget it. "Pete, you're not even listening," she said that Tuesday night, her phone face down on the table like always. I heard every word, something about mindfulness and green smoothies. She rolled her eyes. "I said I'm going out with Lexi and Jade tonight. Girls' night." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Lexi was her enabler friend who treated gossip like an Olympic sport. Jade was the wild card who knew everyone's secrets and wasn't afraid to use them. Together, they were like a toxic support group for bad decisions. "Have fun," I said, not looking up from my meatloaf. After she left, I did what any suspicious husband would do. I snooped, started with her laptop, found nothing, checked her usual hiding spots, came up empty. Then I remembered her gym bag, the one she guarded like Fort Knox. Buried under her protein powder and yoga mat, I found a burner phone. A cheap flip phone that had no business existing in 2024. My hands shook as I opened it. The text messages made my stomach drop. Photos that definitely weren't meant for me. Messages about meeting times, hotel rooms, and things that made me want to punch a wall. But the worst part? The contact name wasn't some random guy. It was Wolf, and I knew exactly who that was. Greg Wilansky. The same Greg from her CrossFit gym. 44 years old, drives a Tesla, owns half the condemned buildings in downtown Cleveland, and apparently has been training my wife in ways that had nothing to do with fitness. I sat on our couch, staring at explicit photos of my wife with a man who looked like he bench-pressed Buicks for fun. The messages went back 4 months. 4 months of lies, fake book clubs, and me making dinner for a woman who was getting her real appetite satisfied elsewhere. The next morning, Miranda bounced downstairs in her workout clothes, all smiles and fake energy. "Morning, honey. I'm meeting the girls for brunch, then hitting the gym." "Which gym?" I asked, not looking up from my coffee. "The usual one, CrossFit downtown." "With Greg?" She paused, and I saw something flicker across her face. "He's just the trainer, Pete." "Don't be weird." Weird. Right. Like being suspicious of your wife's secret phone was the unreasonable part of this equation. That evening, I decided to visit Murphy's Tavern, my favorite dive bar. It was the kind of place where the beer was cheap, the lighting was dim, and nobody asked too many questions. I needed to think, to figure out what to do with the nuclear bomb that had just exploded in my lap. I was nursing my second beer when they walked in. Miranda and Greg, laughing and touching like they owned the place. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something tight and red that made every guy in the bar turn their heads. They didn't see me in my corner booth, but I saw everything. The way he put his hand on the small of her back. The way she leaned into him when he whispered something in her ear. The way they looked at each other like they were the only two people in the world. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Greg was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was average height, muscled where I was getting soft around the middle, confident where I was, well, sitting alone in a bar spying on my cheating wife. "Another beer, Pete?" asked Sally, the bartender who'd known me for 5 years. "Make it a double whiskey," I said, not taking my eyes off the happy couple. They stayed for an hour, playing pool and acting like teenagers. Miranda giggled at everything Greg said. She never giggled at my jokes anymore. When they finally left, I waited 10 minutes, then followed. Greg's Tesla was parked behind the building. Through the tinted windows, I could see them going at it like the world was ending. I took more photos, hating myself but knowing I'd need evidence. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A video file. I opened it and immediately wished I hadn't. It was Miranda, in Greg's car, moaning things she'd never said to me. At the end, she looked directly at the camera and said, "You always make me scream." Even my ex never got me there. Example. She was already talking about me in the past tense. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. When I got there, I did the only thing that made sense. I packed all of Miranda's clothes into garbage bags and stacked them by the front door. Her makeup, her books, her stupid motivational posters about living your best life, Everything went into bags. When she came home at midnight, reeking of cologne that wasn't mine, she found me sitting on the couch with a beer and a printed stack of photos. "Pete, what's all this?" "Your stuff. I figured you'd want it at Greg's place." Her face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." I held up one of the photos. "Really?" "Because Wolf here seems to know you pretty well." She tried to lie, to explain, to turn it around on me. But I was done listening to her voice. I was done pretending our marriage was something it wasn't. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Miranda. Just not in my house." She left that night with tears streaming down her face, loading garbage bags into her Honda like a refugee from her own lies. I watched from the window, feeling empty and angry and strangely relieved all at once. The next morning, I called in sick to work and started planning. If Miranda and Greg wanted to play games, I'd show them how a guy with an IT background and nothing left to lose could really play. Moving out of your own house is like performing surgery on yourself. Painful, messy, and you're never quite sure you're doing it right. I found a studio apartment above Kowalski's Deli, the kind of place where the walls were thin and the rent was cheap. It smelled like pastrami and broken dreams, but it was mine. "This is depressing as hell," said Ronnie Martinez, my best friend since high school, and the only cop I knew who believed the government was run by lizard people. He was helping me move my pathetic collection of belongings up 2 flights of stairs. "It's temporary," I said, dropping a box of computer equipment on the floor. "Everything's temporary, Pete. That doesn't make it suck less." Ronnie was built like a refrigerator and had the cynical worldview of someone who'd seen too much domestic violence and not enough justice. He'd been telling me for months that Miranda was trouble, but I hadn't listened. "So what's the plan?" he asked, cracking open a beer from the 6-pack he'd brought. "First, I need to know everything about Greg Wilansky. His business, his finances, his dirty laundry, everything." "You thinking about hiring a PI?" "Already did. Guy named Murphy, works out of an office above the pawn shop on Euclid. Drinks too much, but he's thorough. The truth was, I'd spent the last 3 days learning everything I could about my wife's new boyfriend. Greg owned Wilansky Properties, a company that specialized in buying condemned buildings, doing minimal repairs, and flipping them for huge profits. The kind of business that skirted building codes and safety regulations. But I needed more than internet research. I needed dirt. Murphy called me that Thursday with his first report. "Your boy Greg's got some interesting business practices," he said in his gravelly smoker's voice. He's been buying properties that failed city inspections, doing cosmetic work to hide structural problems, then selling them to families who don't know any better." "Is that illegal?" "Not technically, but it's shady as hell. And if the right people knew about it, he'd have some serious problems." "What kind of problems?" "The kind that involve angry customers, city inspectors, and maybe some very pissed-off contractors who haven't been paid." I smiled for the first time in weeks. Keep digging. Meanwhile, Miranda was making my life hell at work. Pinnacle Development contracted with Midwest Tech Solutions for their IT support, which meant I had to see her twice a week for system updates. She'd started spreading rumors about my anger issues and controlling behavior, painting herself as the victim of an abusive marriage. "Pete's been really unstable lately," I heard her tell Janet from accounting. "I'm worried about what he might do." The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. She was worried about what I might do? "Lady, you ain't seen nothing yet." My chance for payback came the following Friday. Greg worked out at Iron Temple Gym every morning at 6 a.m., like clockwork. I knew this because I'd been watching him for a week, learning his routine. I got there at 5:30 with a bag of supplies Ronnie had helped me acquire. Nothing illegal, just some creative materials for a harmless prank. Greg's Tesla was parked in his usual spot, gleaming black paint reflecting the morning sun like it was posing for a magazine cover. I worked quickly, wrapping the entire car in industrial-strength plastic wrap, the kind restaurants use for food storage. Then I popped the hood and poured a bottle of fish sauce into his air conditioning intake. For the finishing touch, I used washable spray paint to write "Cheater" across his windshield in bright red letters. I was sitting in my car across the street when he came out of the gym an hour later. The look on his face was worth every minute of planning. He stood there in his designer workout clothes, staring at his wrapped car like it was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Other gym members started gathering around, pointing and laughing. Someone took photos. Greg's face turned the same color as the paint on his windshield. He started tearing at the plastic wrap with his bare hands, cursing loud enough to wake the dead. When he finally got the driver's door open and started the car, the fish sauce hit the fan. Literally. The smell that came pouring out of those vents was like low tide mixed with a dumpster fire. Greg stumbled out of the car, gagging and dry heaving on the sidewalk while a crowd of muscleheads laughed and recorded videos. "Nice wheels, Wolf," I said, rolling down my window as I drove past. Shame about the smell. He looked up and saw me, his face twisted with rage. But what was he going to do? Call the cops and report that someone pranked his car? Admit he was cheating with another man's wife? I drove home feeling better than I had in months. That afternoon, Murphy called with more interesting news. Your wife and her boyfriend are planning something big, he said. They've been meeting with a real estate lawyer, talking about selling property and splitting assets. What property? Your house, Pete. The one that's in both your names. My blood went cold. They can't sell it without my signature. They can if they forge your signature. And from what I overheard, that's exactly what they're planning. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall of my crappy studio apartment. Miranda wasn't just cheating on me, she was planning to steal everything I'd worked for and leave me with nothing. That night, I called Ronnie. Remember what you said about fighting dirty? Yeah, I'm ready to learn. About time. What do you need? Everything you know about surveillance, documentation, and making sure bad people get what they deserve. Ronnie was quiet for a moment. Pete, I've seen what revenge does to people. It eats you alive if you're not careful. I'm already being eaten alive, Ronnie. At least this way, I get to choose the menu. He sighed. All right. But we do this smart, and we do it legal. I'm not visiting you in prison. Deal. As I hung up the phone, I looked out my window at the city lights below. Miranda and Greg thought they were playing chess while I was stuck playing checkers. They were about to learn that I'd been playing a completely different game all along. If they wanted war, they'd get one. But this time, I wasn't going to be the nice guy who finished last. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you a tremendous advantage. People assume that because you're quiet, you're weak. Because you're polite, you're stupid. Because you fix computers for a living, you don't understand how the real world works. Miranda and Greg were about to learn how wrong they were. I started with what I knew best, information. 20 years in, IT had taught me that data was power, and power was leverage. I couldn't hack into Greg's systems without breaking the law, but I could use perfectly legal methods to gather intelligence. Public records were a goldmine. Property transfers, building permits, business licenses, court filings. It was all there if you knew where to look, and I knew exactly where to look. Greg's company had been cited 17 times in the past 2 years for building code violations. He'd sold 3 properties that later required major structural repairs. 2 families had filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau about safety issues that Greg had failed to disclose. But the real treasure was his relationship with city inspectors. Cross-referencing permit approvals with inspection dates, I found a pattern. The same inspector, a guy named Dennis Kowalski, had approved every one of Greg's projects, often without proper documentation. Bingo, I muttered, printing out the evidence. Meanwhile, the gossip mill was working in my favor. Mrs. Dorsey, my 70-year-old neighbor who knew everyone's business, had become my unofficial intelligence network. That wife of yours was screaming at her boyfriend in the street last night, she told me when I stopped by to pick up my mail. Called him a limp wolf, right there on the sidewalk. Half the neighborhood heard it. Really? Oh yes, and that friend of hers, the blonde one with the big mouth, she was there too, laughing like it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. Your wife didn't think it was so funny. Lexi was turning on Miranda. That was interesting. I decided it was time to escalate things. Murphy had discovered that Greg owed money to some unsavory characters, specifically a biker gang called the Iron Wolves, who'd fronted him cash for a property deal that had gone sideways. Greg had promised them a return on their investment, then used their money to buy Miranda expensive jewelry instead. I couldn't directly contact the bikers without getting myself in trouble, but I could make sure they found out where Greg lived and what he'd been doing with their money. A carefully worded anonymous tip to their clubhouse, along with photos of Greg's Tesla and his expensive condo, was all it took. I didn't tell them to do anything illegal, I just provided information and let nature take its course. 2 days later, Greg's car was found in the impound lot with 4 flat tires and "Pay Your Debts" keyed into the paint. His condo building's lobby had been decorated with flyers featuring his photo and the words "Deadbeat" in bold letters. Greg was starting to look over his shoulder everywhere he went, but I wasn't done with him yet. The next phase required more finesse. Miranda worked in HR at Pinnacle Development, and HR departments had very strict policies about conflicts of interest. Employees weren't supposed to have romantic relationships with vendors or contractors. Greg's company had been doing business with Pinnacle for 3 years. If their relationship became public knowledge, Miranda would be in violation of company policy. I sent an anonymous email to Pinnacle's corporate headquarters, complete with photos of Miranda and Greg together, copies of their text messages, and a detailed timeline of their relationship alongside Greg's business dealings with the company. The response was swift and brutal. Miranda was suspended pending an internal investigation. Her access to company systems was revoked, her corporate credit card was canceled, and suddenly everyone at Pinnacle knew exactly why she was being investigated. "Pete, you bastard!" she screamed at me over the phone. "I know this was you." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said calmly. "Maybe you should have thought about company policy before you started sleeping with a contractor." "This is harassment. I'll sue you." "For what? Telling the truth? Good luck with that." She hung up on me, but I wasn't finished. Greg's fixer, a ex-con named Frankie Torino, decided to pay me a visit at my apartment building. He was waiting for me in the parking lot when I got home from work, all 6'4" and 250 pounds of him. "You need to back off," he said, stepping out from behind a van. "Back off what?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline surge. "You know what? Stop messing with Greg's business." "I'm not messing with anything. I'm just a guy trying to live his life." Frankie took a step closer. "Greg's got friends. Important friends. You don't want to make enemies." That's when I played the card Ronnie had taught me to always keep in my back pocket. I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Are you threatening me?" I asked loudly. "Because if you are, I want to make sure I get it on video." Frankie's eyes went wide. "Turn that off." "No, I don't think I will." "Please, continue telling me about Greg's important friends and how I don't want to make enemies. The police are going to love this." He lunged for my phone, but I was ready. I ducked under his arm and ran toward the building, shouting for help. Mrs. Kowalski from the deli came out to see what was happening, along with 2 other neighbors. Frankie realized he was outnumbered and exposed. He got back in his van and drove off, but not before I got his license plate number. "You okay, Pete?" asked Mrs. Kowalski. "I am now. Thanks for coming out." That evening, I edited the video and posted it on the neighborhood Facebook group with the caption, "This man threatened me in our parking lot today. Be careful out there, folks." Within an hour, it had been shared 50 times. By morning, it was all over local social media, and someone had identified Frankie by name. His parole officer got a copy of the video, and suddenly Greg's muscle was dealing with his own problems. But the real masterstroke came when Murphy discovered the truth about Miranda's finances. "She's been skimming money from Greg's business accounts," he told me over coffee at a diner downtown. "Small amounts, but consistent. Looks like she's been planning her own exit strategy." "What do you mean?" "Your wife's been playing both sides, Pete. She's been stealing from Greg while pretending to love him, probably planning to disappear with his money once the divorce is final." I stared at Murphy, processing this information. Miranda wasn't just a cheating wife, she was a con artist. "Can you prove it?" "I can prove she's been accessing his accounts. I can prove she's been transferring money to hidden accounts. What I can't prove is whether Greg knows about it." "He doesn't," I said with certainty. "If he knew, she'd already be gone." "So what are you going to do with this information?" I smiled, feeling a plan come together in my mind. "I'm going to let them destroy each other." That night, I prepared 3 envelopes. One for Greg, containing evidence of Miranda's theft, one for Miranda, containing evidence of Greg's illegal business practices, and one for myself, containing copies of everything. But I didn't send them yet. I wanted to watch them squirm a little longer. The next morning, I got a call from Miranda. She was crying, which was unusual for her. "Pete, please? Can we talk? I made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "All of it. Greg, the affair, everything. I want to come home." "That's interesting timing, considering your boyfriend's recent troubles." "It's not about that. I realized I love you. I always loved you." I almost laughed. "Miranda, you called me your ex while you were screwing him in his car. I have it on video." She was quiet for a long moment. "You've been watching us?" "I've been documenting everything, every lie, every betrayal, every crime. Did you really think I was just going to roll over and let you destroy my life?" "What do you want?" "I want you to sign the divorce papers and walk away. Take whatever's left of your dignity and start over somewhere else." "And if I don't?" "Then I release everything I have. The theft, the affair, Greg's business practices, all of it. You'll both be ruined." She hung up without saying goodbye. An hour later, Greg called me. "We need to talk," he said. "Do we?" "Face to face. Tonight? The old Westbrook building on Superior Avenue. You know the one. I knew it." It was one of Greg's properties, a condemned high-rise that he'd been trying to flip for 2 years. Empty, isolated, and probably not the safest place for a meeting. Why there? Privacy. This thing between us ends tonight, one way or another. After he hung up, I called Ronnie. "I think I'm about to walk into a trap." "Then don't walk into it, genius." "I have to. This is my chance to end it." "Pete, These people have already proven they're dangerous. Greg's got a criminal working for him, your wife's been stealing money, and now they want to meet you in an abandoned building? This sounds like the beginning of a very short horror movie. I'll be careful. You'll be dead. Take me with you, at least. I thought about it. Okay, but we do this smart. Finally, you're making sense. As I prepared for what might be the final confrontation, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come. 3 months ago, I was a naive husband who thought his biggest problem was a boring marriage. Now I was planning a showdown with criminals in an abandoned building. Life had gotten a lot more interesting and a lot more dangerous. The Westbrook building had been rotting in downtown Cleveland for 15 years, a testament to urban decay and failed dreams. 23 floors of broken windows, water damage, and structural problems that would cost more to fix than the building was worth. It was the perfect metaphor for Greg's business model, pretty on the outside, rotten at the core. Ronnie and I arrived an hour early to scout the location. The main entrance was chained shut, but there was a service door on the east side that had been pried open by homeless people and urban explorers. "This is a terrible idea," Ronnie muttered, checking his flashlight for the 3rd time. "You said you'd help." "I said I'd keep you from getting killed." There's a difference. We made our way up to the 5th floor, where Greg had said to meet. The elevators were dead, and the stairwells smelled like mold and human waste. Every step echoed in the empty space, making us sound like an army instead of 2 middle-aged guys with trust issues. "Motion sensors," I said, setting up 3 small cameras I'd bought online. "If anyone else shows up, we'll know about it." "You're getting paranoid in your old age." "I'm getting smart. There's a difference." At exactly 9 p.m., we heard footsteps in the stairwell. Greg appeared first, wearing an expensive jacket that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Behind him came Frankie, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Just you and me, Pete," Greg called out. "Tell your cop friend to wait downstairs." "He stays," I said. "You brought muscle, I brought backup." "Seems fair." Greg shrugged and walked closer. In the dim light filtering through broken windows, he looked older than his 44 years. The stress of the past few weeks had carved lines around his eyes and turned his usual swagger into something more desperate. "You've been busy," he said. "I've been thorough. The bikers, the city inspectors, getting Miranda suspended from work, that was all you. I just provided information. Other people made their own choices about what to do with it." Greg laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you're clever, don't you? Hiding behind your computer, pulling strings like some kind of puppet master? I think I'm a guy who got tired of being lied to. Miranda made a mistake. People make mistakes. Miranda made a choice. Every day for 4 months, she chose to betray me. That's not a mistake, Greg. That's a pattern." Frankie shifted uncomfortably behind Greg, his hand moving towards something under his jacket. Ronnie noticed and took a step forward. "Easy there, big guy," Ronnie said. "Let's keep this civilized." "You want to know the funny thing?" Greg continued, ignoring the tension. "She was planning to leave you anyway. With or without me. Your marriage was over before I ever touched her. Maybe. But that was her decision to make, not yours. So what now? You've destroyed my business, turned my friends against me, cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. What's the endgame here, Pete?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a video file. "The endgame is this." It was security footage from Greg's office building, showing Miranda accessing his computer after hours. Murphy had gotten it from a private investigator who specialized in corporate theft. "She's been stealing from you, Greg. For months, while you were busy screwing her, she was cleaning out your business accounts." Greg's face went white. "That's impossible. Check your books. Really check them this time. Look at the transfers to accounts you didn't authorize. Look at the payments to vendors that don't exist." I could see the wheels turning in his head, connecting dots he'd been too distracted to notice before. "How much?" he asked quietly. "Enough to buy a new identity and disappear. My guess is she was planning to take your money and leave both of us holding the bag." Frankie whispered something in Greg's ear, but Greg waved him off. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Call her right now. Ask her where she was last Tuesday night when she said she was with Lexi. Ask her about the account at First National Bank under the name Miranda Walsh. Ask her why she's been researching non-extradition countries." Greg's hands were shaking now. He pulled out his phone and dialed Miranda's number. "Where are you?" he said when she answered. "No, don't lie to me." "Where are you really?" I couldn't hear her response, but I could see Greg's face crumbling as the truth hit him. "The bank account, Miranda." "The one you thought I didn't know about? How much did you take?" More talking from her end, getting louder and more frantic. "Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. I trusted you." He hung up and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "She's gone," he said. "Packed her bags and left town an hour ago." "I know. My PI's been watching her apartment." "You knew she was going to run?" "I knew she was planning something. I just wasn't sure what. Turns out she was playing both of us." Greg sat down on a piece of concrete rubble, suddenly looking exhausted. "So what now?" he asked. "Now you decide what kind of man you want to be. You can keep trying to blame me for your problems, or you can accept that you got involved with a woman who was using you from day one. And you? What do you get out of this?" "I get my life back. I get to stop being the victim and start being the guy who survived." Frankie was getting antsy, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he was expecting trouble. "Boss, we should go," he said. "This place gives me the creeps." That's when we heard footsteps in the stairwell again. Multiple sets, moving fast. "You expecting company?" Ronnie asked, his hand moving toward his concealed weapon. "No," Greg said, standing up quickly. The footsteps were getting closer. I checked my motion sensors and saw 3 figures moving up the stairs, all wearing dark clothing. "We need to leave," I said. "Now." But it was too late. 3 men in ski masks appeared at the top of the stairwell, and they didn't look like they were here to talk. "Greg Wolanski?" one of them called out. "Shit," Greg muttered. "Iron Wolves." The bikers had found him. "You owe us money," the lead biker said. "A lot of money, and we're tired of waiting." "I can explain," Greg started, but the biker cut him off. "Explanation time is over. Payment time is now." That's when everything went sideways. Frankie, trying to protect his boss, reached for his weapon. Ronnie, seeing the threat, drew his gun. The bikers, thinking they were being ambushed, scattered for cover. "Everyone calm down," I shouted, but nobody was listening. A gunshot echoed through the empty building, then another. I dove behind a concrete pillar as chaos erupted around me. "Pete!" Ronnie called out. "This way!" We ran for the stairwell, but the bikers were blocking the exit. The only way out was up, toward the roof. "The elevator shaft," I said, remembering the building's layout from Greg's renovation plans. "There's a service ladder." We made it to the shaft and started climbing, 23 floors of rusted metal rungs in complete darkness. Behind us, I could hear shouting and more gunshots. "This is insane," Ronnie panted as we climbed. "Just keep moving." When we finally reached the roof, we were alone. The city spread out below us, lights twinkling like stars in the darkness. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. "You think they're okay down there?" I asked. "I think they're all idiots who made bad choices," Ronnie replied. "But yeah, I hope nobody got killed." We waited on the roof until the police arrived, then climbed back down to give our statements. Greg and Frankie were in custody, along with 2 of the 3 bikers. The third had apparently escaped in the confusion. As I watched Greg being led away in handcuffs, I felt something I hadn't expected: pity. He'd been a successful businessman who'd let his ego and his libido destroy everything he'd built. In a way, we were both victims of the same woman, but unlike me, he'd chosen to handle it with violence and intimidation. I'd chosen to handle it with information and patience. "So what now?" Ronnie asked as we walked back to our cars. "Now I go home and start over." "Think you'll hear from Miranda again?" I thought about it. Probably not. She got what she wanted, enough money to disappear and start fresh somewhere else. In a weird way, I should thank her. Thank her? She showed me who I really am. Not the nice guy who gets walked on, but the guy who fights back when he has to. The guy who doesn't give up. Ronnie clapped me on the shoulder. "You did good, Pete. You could have let this destroy you, but instead you turned it into something else." "Yeah, I turned it into the last word." As I drove home to my crappy studio apartment, I realized something important. I wasn't the same man who'd discovered that burner phone 6 months ago. That guy had been naive, trusting, and passive. This guy, the guy I was now, was smarter, stronger, and a hell of a lot more dangerous when pushed. Miranda and Greg had tried to make me the victim of their story. Instead, I'd made them the villains of mine. And the best part? I'd done it all without breaking a single law or compromising my principles. I'd simply given them enough rope to hang themselves, then stepped back and watched them do it. The last word, indeed. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my favorite booth at Murphy's Tavern, reading the morning paper and enjoying the kind of peace that comes from having your enemies destroy themselves. Greg was facing charges for assault and illegal business practices. The Iron Wolves had provided the police with detailed information about his financial dealings in exchange for reduced sentences. His company was bankrupt, his assets frozen, and his reputation in ruins. Miranda had vanished completely, taking approximately $200,000 of Greg's money with her. The FBI had opened an investigation into interstate fraud, but she'd covered her tracks well. My guess was that she was sitting on a beach somewhere, planning her next con. Pete Fenton? I looked up to see a woman in her 30s, professionally dressed with the kind of smile that usually meant trouble. Depends who's asking. I'm Jennifer Walsh, Miranda's sister. We need to talk. I'd never met Jennifer, but Miranda had mentioned her occasionally. Older sister, lawyer, lived in Chicago. The family resemblance was strong. Same dark hair, same calculating eyes, same ability to make you feel like you were being sized up for a coffin. About what? About the money she stole, and about making this right. Jennifer sat down across from me without being invited, ordering a coffee from Sally like she owned the place. Miranda didn't just steal from Greg, she continued. She stole from our family trust, from our mother's medical fund, from everyone who ever trusted her. This is a pattern that goes back years. And you're telling me this because I think you're the only person who's ever successfully fought back against her. Everyone else just became another victim. I studied Jennifer's face, looking for the family resemblance in personality as well as appearance. What do you want? I want to hire you. I'm not a private investigator. No, but you're something better. You're someone who understands how Miranda thinks, and you're smart enough to stay one step ahead of her. Jennifer pulled out a tablet and showed me a series of financial documents. This is what she's stolen over the past 5 years. From Greg, from our family, from 2 previous boyfriends, and from a business partner in Denver. We're talking about over $1 million. I whistled softly. She's been busy. She's been building a nest egg for years, moving money through shell companies and offshore accounts. The FBI investigation is just the tip of the iceberg. So call the FBI. The FBI moves slowly, and Miranda's always been good at staying ahead of law enforcement. But you got inside her head, you anticipated her moves, you made her panic and run before she was ready. Jennifer leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. She's not done, Pete. People like Miranda don't just retire to a beach somewhere. They find new victims, new marks, new ways to hurt people. Right now, she's probably already working on her next con. That's not my problem anymore. Isn't it? She destroyed your marriage, stole years of your life, and tried to leave you with nothing. Don't you want to make sure she can't do that to someone else? I thought about it. The smart thing would be to walk away, to enjoy my newfound peace, and let Miranda be someone else's problem. But Jennifer was right about one thing. People like Miranda didn't stop. They just found new victims. What exactly are you proposing? Jennifer smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like her sister. I'm proposing we finish what you started. You found her weakness, her greed. You made her run before she was ready. Now we use that against her. How? By giving her exactly what she wants. A new mark, a new con, a new chance to steal money she can't resist. You want to set a trap? I want to set the perfect trap, one that she'll walk into willingly, thinking she's found her next victim. Jennifer pulled out another document, this one showing a bank account with a balance of $5 million. This is money recovered from her previous cons, held in trust pending legal resolution. She knows it exists, and she knows it's just sitting there, earning interest. You want to use it as bait. I want to use it as justice. We make her think she's found a way to steal it, let her commit to the con, then spring the trap when she's most vulnerable. I had to admit, it was elegant. Use Miranda's own greed and overconfidence against her, the same way I'd used Greg's ego and stupidity. What's in it for you? Closure, and the satisfaction of knowing she can't hurt anyone else. And what's in it for me? Jennifer's smile widened. Revenge. The kind of complete, total revenge that most people only dream about. I thought about Miranda, probably sitting in some expensive resort, laughing about how she'd fooled everyone, thinking she'd gotten away with it. Tell me more about this trap. For the next hour, Jennifer laid out her plan. It was complex, requiring careful timing and flawless execution, but it was also brilliant. We would create a fake investment opportunity, something too good for Miranda to resist. We'd use her own techniques against her, making her think she was the hunter when she was actually the prey. She'll never see it coming, Jennifer said. Her ego won't let her believe that someone could out-con the con artist. When do we start? We already have. I've been laying the groundwork for weeks, creating the fake company, establishing the paper trail, building the legend. All I needed was someone who understood Miranda well enough to predict her moves. Jennifer handed me a business card with the name Marcus Blackwood, investment consultant, and a phone number. That's your new identity. Wealthy widower, recently inherited money, looking for someone to help him invest it. You're exactly the kind of mark Miranda specializes in. How do you know she'll take the bait? Because I'm going to make sure she hears about you through channels she trusts. Old contacts, people who don't know she's burned her bridges. By the time the story gets to her, it'll seem like she discovered you on her own. I looked at the business card, thinking about the man I'd been 6 months ago. That guy never would have agreed to something like this. That guy would have walked away and tried to forget Miranda ever existed. But that guy was gone, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and a lot less forgiving. What's the timeline? 2 weeks to establish your legend, another week for the story to reach Miranda, then however long it takes for her to make contact. My guess is she'll be calling you within a month. And then? Then we give her the performance of her life. We make her believe she's found the perfect mark, let her invest time and emotion in the con, then we destroy her the same way she's destroyed everyone else. I thought about Greg, sitting in a jail cell, his life ruined by his association with Miranda. I thought about all the other victims Jennifer had mentioned, people who'd trusted Miranda and paid the price. All right, I said, let's do it. Jennifer's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Welcome to the team, Marcus. As I walked home that evening, I realized I was looking forward to this in a way that probably wasn't entirely healthy. The old Pete would have been horrified by what I was planning. The new Pete was already thinking about how satisfying it would be to watch Miranda's face when she realized she'd been played. Some people might call it revenge. I preferred to think of it as justice. After all, Miranda had taught me that sometimes the only way to deal with predators was to become a better predator, and I'd always been a fast learner. 2 weeks later, Marcus Blackwood had a complete online presence, a bank account with a substantial balance, and a tragic backstory that would appeal to Miranda's predatory instincts. Wealthy widower, still grieving, not very sophisticated about money, exactly the kind of Mark she couldn't resist. Jennifer had been right about the timeline. 3 weeks after we'd started, I got a call from a woman with a familiar voice and an unfamiliar name. Mr. Blackwood, this is Sarah Mitchell from Premier Investment Services. I understand you're looking for someone to help you manage your late wife's estate? Sarah Mitchell, even her fake names were boring. Yes, I said, affecting the slightly lost tone of a man out of his depth. I'm not really sure where to start. It's all very overwhelming. I completely understand. Loss is never easy, and financial matters can seem impossibly complicated when you're grieving. Perhaps we could meet for coffee. I'd be happy to explain your options. Hook, line, and sinker. That would be wonderful. When would be convenient for you? We arranged to meet at an upscale coffee shop downtown, the kind of place where Miranda would feel comfortable and confident. I spent the morning preparing, getting into character as a lonely widower who was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Or so she would think. When I walked into the coffee shop, I spotted her immediately. She'd changed her hair color from brown to blonde and was wearing glasses she didn't need, but it was definitely Miranda. She looked good, rested, confident, predatory. Mr. Blackwood? She stood up with a warm smile, extending her hand. Sarah Mitchell, thank you so much for meeting me. Her handshake was firm, professional, designed to inspire confidence. She was wearing an expensive business suit and carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Please call me Marcus, I said, sitting down across from her. I have to say, I wasn't sure about this whole thing, but you seem very professional. I've been helping people manage their finances for over 10 years, she said smoothly. I specialize in working with clients who are dealing with sudden wealth, whether from inheritance, insurance settlements, or other life changes. She was good. I had to give her credit for that. If I'd actually been a grieving widower, I probably would have trusted her completely. My wife handled all of our investments, I said, playing my part. I'm afraid I'm completely lost without her guidance. That's very common. Many couples divide financial responsibilities, and when one partner passes away, the survivor can feel overwhelmed. How much are we talking about, if you don't mind me asking? The life insurance was substantial, about $4 million, plus the house and some other assets. I know I should be grateful, but honestly, I'd trade it all to have her back. Miranda's eyes lit up at the mention of $4 million, though she hid it well. Of course you would. Money can't replace love, but it can provide security, and I'm sure your wife would want you to be taken care of. We talked for another hour, with Miranda expertly drawing out details about my fictional financial situation while sharing carefully crafted stories about her. Other clients. She was professional, sympathetic, and completely convincing. She was also walking straight into the trap we'd set for her. I'd like to help you, Marcus, she said finally, but I want to be completely transparent about my process. I typically ask for a retainer to begin the consultation process, just to ensure that both parties are serious about moving forward. How much of a retainer? Usually $50,000. I know that sounds like a lot, but it shows me that you're committed to the process, and it allows me to begin the preliminary work immediately. $50,000. She was starting small, testing to see how gullible her mark was. If I paid it, she'd know she had me hooked. That seems reasonable, I said. When would you need it? As soon as possible. I have other clients interested in my services, and I work on a first-come, first-served basis. The artificial scarcity close. Classic con artist technique. I can have it transferred tomorrow, I said. Should I send it to your business account? Actually, I prefer to use a separate account for retainers. It keeps the bookkeeping cleaner. Of course she did. The separate account would be easier to empty and abandon when she disappeared. Perfect. I'll have my bank transfer the money first thing in the morning. Miranda smiled, and for just a moment, I saw the real her underneath the professional facade, the predator who thought she'd found her next victim. Wonderful. I think this is going to be a very profitable relationship, Marcus. She had no idea how right she was. As I walked back to my car, I called Jennifer. Phase 1 complete, I said. She took the bait. How did she seem? Confident. Professional. Completely convinced that she's found her next mark. Perfect. Now we move to Phase 2. Phase 2 was where things got interesting. Over the next month, I would gradually reveal more details about my fictional wealth, allowing Miranda to think she was slowly gaining my trust. Meanwhile, Jennifer would be working behind the scenes, documenting everything and preparing the trap that would ultimately destroy Miranda's new life. It was going to be beautiful. 3 days later, Miranda called to confirm that she'd received the retainer and was beginning work on my portfolio. Her voice was warm, professional, and completely fake. I've been reviewing your situation, Marcus, and I think we can do some really exciting things with your assets. Would you be available for dinner this week? I'd like to discuss some opportunities that require a more personal touch. The personal touch. She was moving to Phase 2 of her own con, the part where she would use romance and intimacy to completely control her victim. I'd like that very much, I said. It gets lonely eating by myself every night. I can imagine. Grief is such a difficult journey, and it's important to have support from people who understand. People who understand. Like a woman who'd been stealing from Marks for years and was now setting up her biggest score yet. Where would you like to meet? There's a lovely restaurant called Chez Laurent downtown. Very intimate, perfect for discussing sensitive financial matters. Expensive, romantic, designed to make me feel special and important. She was pulling out all the stops. That sounds perfect. Friday at 8? I'll make the reservation. And Marcus, thank you for trusting me with this. I know how difficult it must be to open up to someone new. After she hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about how far I'd come. 6 months ago, I'd been a naive husband who thought his biggest problem was a boring marriage. Now I was running a complex con against a professional criminal, and I was actually looking forward to it. Miranda had created this version of me. She'd turned a trusting man into someone who could lie, manipulate, and plan revenge with the best of them. Friday night was going to be very interesting indeed. I spent the rest of the week preparing for dinner, getting deeper into character as Marcus Blackwood. Jennifer had provided me with detailed background information, family photos, and even a fake wedding ring that looked appropriately worn. Remember, she told me during our final briefing, she's going to try to seduce you. That's how she operates. She makes her marks fall in love with her, then uses that emotional connection to justify increasingly large investments. I can handle it. Can you? Because she's very good at this, Pete. She made you fall in love with her once before. I thought about that. That was different. I was married to Miranda, not Sarah Mitchell. I knew Miranda's real personality, her quirks, her genuine moments. Sarah Mitchell is just a character she's playing. Just remember, everything she says, everything she does, it's all part of the con. Don't let yourself forget that. Friday evening arrived, and I made my way to Chez Laurent feeling like an actor preparing for the performance of his life. The restaurant was exactly what I'd expected. Dim lighting, expensive wine, the kind of place where wealthy men brought their mistresses. Miranda was already there, waiting at a corner table that offered privacy and an excellent view of the room. She'd dressed to kill. A black dress that was professional enough to maintain her cover, but attractive enough to send a clear message. Marcus, she said, standing to greet me with a kiss on the cheek. You look wonderful. So do you. I have to say, this is the first time I've looked forward to anything in months. We sat down, and she immediately began working her magic, asking about my day, my interests, my late wife's favorite restaurants. She was building a connection, making me feel like she genuinely cared about me as a person. Tell me about her, she said softly. Your wife. What was she like? I launched into the backstory Jennifer and I had created, painting a picture of a loving marriage cut short by tragedy. Miranda listened with apparent sympathy, asking all the right questions, making all the right sounds. "She sounds wonderful," she said finally. "I'm sure she'd want you to be happy again." "I hope so. It's been difficult, trying to figure out how to move forward." "That's completely natural. Grief doesn't follow a timeline, and everyone processes loss differently." She reached across the table and touched my hand, a gesture that was both comforting and intimate. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I feel a real connection with you, Marcus. Beyond the professional relationship, I mean." And there it was. The hook, delivered with perfect timing and just the right amount of vulnerability. "I feel it too," I said. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it. You weren't. "There's something special here, something I haven't felt in a long time." She was good. If I hadn't known exactly what she was doing, I might have believed her. Over dinner, she gradually steered the conversation back to business, but now it was framed in terms of our growing relationship. "I want to help you build something beautiful with your wife's legacy," she said. "Something that would make her proud." "What did you have in mind?" "There's an investment opportunity that just became available. Very exclusive, very profitable. The kind of thing that could double your money in 6 months. Double my money in 6 months? The classic too good to be true promise that every con artist used. That sounds almost too good to be true." "I know it does, but this is a special situation. A tech company that's about to be acquired by a major corporation. The acquisition hasn't been announced yet, but I have inside information." Inside information. Another red flag that any sophisticated investor would recognize immediately. How much would I need to invest? The minimum buy-in is $500,000. I know that's a significant amount, but the returns would be life-changing. $500,000. 10 times the amount of her initial retainer. She was escalating quickly, probably because she sensed that Marcus Blackwood was exactly the kind of naive Mark she specialized in. "I'd need to think about it." "Of course. But Marcus, I have to be honest with you. This opportunity won't be available for long. The acquisition announcement could come any day, and once it does, the price will skyrocket." The artificial urgency close again. She was sticking to the playbook. "How long do I have to decide?" "A few days at most. I'm sorry to pressure you, but I'd hate for you to miss out on something this significant." I pretended to wrestle with the decision, playing the part of a man torn between caution and greed. "All right," I said finally. "Let's do it." Miranda's smile was radiant, and for a moment I could see the genuine excitement underneath her professional mask. She thought she'd just hooked the biggest fish of her career. I think this is the beginning of something wonderful, Marcus. Both professionally and personally." She leaned across the table and kissed me softly, sealing the deal with a promise of romance and riches. As I drove home that night, I called Jennifer with an update. "She's moving fast," I reported. $500,000 for the first major investment, and she's mixing business with pleasure." "Perfect. That's exactly what we expected." How did it feel, being back in her web? I thought about that question. Different. When I was married to her, I didn't know I was being manipulated. This time, I could see every technique, every psychological trick. It was like watching a magician perform when you already know how the trick works. Good. That means you're ready for the final phase. The final phase. The part where we would spring our trap and watch Miranda's world collapse around her. What's the timeline? 1 week? We let her think she successfully conned you out of $500,000. Then we reveal that Marcus Blackwood doesn't exist and that she's been playing against the one person who knows all her moves. And then? Then we watch her realize that she's not the smartest person in the room anymore, that someone finally beat her at her own game. I hung up the phone and sat in my car for a moment, thinking about what was coming. In 1 week, I would have the revenge I'd been planning for months. Complete, total, and absolutely devastating revenge against the woman who'd tried to destroy my life. It was going to be beautiful. The week passed quickly. I played my part perfectly, transferring the $500,000 to Miranda's account and acting like a man who was falling in love with his financial advisor. She, in turn, played the part of a woman who was genuinely smitten with her wealthy client. We had dinner twice more, and each time she was more affectionate, more intimate, more convincing in her performance. She talked about our future together, about the life we could build with my wife's money. She was so good at the role that I almost felt sorry for her. On Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after our first dinner, I called Miranda with news that would change everything. "Sarah, we need to meet. Something's happened." "What's wrong? You sound upset." "I can't discuss it over the phone. Can you meet me at the coffee shop where we first met? It's important." "Of course. I'll be there in an hour." I arrived early and chose a table in the center of the room, where there would be plenty of witnesses for what was about to happen. Jennifer was already there, sitting at a nearby table, ready to document everything. Miranda arrived precisely on time, looking concerned and professional. She was still playing the role of Sarah Mitchell, caring financial advisor and potential romantic partner. "Marcus, what's wrong? You sounded so upset on the phone?" I looked at her for a long moment, studying her face, memorizing this moment before everything changed. "My name isn't Marcus Blackwood," I said quietly. She blinked, not understanding. "I'm sorry?" "My name is Pete Fenton, and you're not Sarah Mitchell. You're Miranda Fenton, my ex-wife." The color drained from her face as the words hit her. I watched her mind racing, trying to process what was happening, trying to figure out how her perfect con had gone so wrong. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice was shaking. $4 million in life insurance money. A grieving widower who didn't understand finances. Inside information about a tech company acquisition. It was a beautiful con, Miranda. Really professional work. She started to stand up, but I continued talking. "The only problem is that Marcus Blackwood doesn't exist. The bank account you've been stealing from belongs to the FBI. And every conversation we've had, every promise you've made, every lie you've told, it's all been recorded." Miranda sat back down heavily, her professional mask finally slipping away. "Pete," she whispered. "Hello, Miranda. Did you miss me?" She looked around the coffee shop, probably calculating her chances of escape, but Jennifer had anticipated that. 2 FBI agents were sitting at the counter, and a third was blocking the rear exit. "How?" she asked. "How did I find you? How did I set this up? How did I manage to out-con the professional con artist?" I leaned forward, smiling. "You taught me everything I needed to know. Every technique you used on me, every psychological trick, every manipulation, I learned it all from watching you work. You created your own worst enemy, Miranda. You turned a trusting husband into someone who could beat you at your own game." Tears were running down her face now, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "The money from Greg's accounts is being returned to his creditors. The FBI has been tracking it since the day you disappeared. My family trust. Your sister Jennifer says hello. She's the one who helped me set this up." Miranda's head snapped around, and she saw Jennifer for the first time, sitting 3 tables away with a laptop and a camera. "Jenny," she breathed. Jennifer waved cheerfully, then went back to typing. "She's been documenting everything, Miranda. Every crime you've committed, every person you've hurt, every dollar you've stolen. The FBI has enough evidence to put you away for 20 years. Miranda looked back at me, her eyes filled with something I'd never seen before, genuine fear. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand what it feels like to be completely powerless, to have someone you trust turn your life upside down, to realize that everything you thought you knew was a lie." I stood up, looking down at her. "I want you to know that you didn't win. You didn't get away with it, and you didn't destroy me." The FBI agents were approaching our table now, badges visible, handcuffs ready. "Miranda Walsh," one of them said, "you're under arrest for interstate fraud, money laundering, and theft by deception." As they read her rights and cuffed her hands behind her back, Miranda looked at me one last time. "I did love you, Pete. At least some of it was real." I thought about that for a moment, then shook my head. "No, Miranda. None of it was real. That's what made you so dangerous, and that's what made this so satisfying." As they led her away, Jennifer came over and sat down beside me. "How do you feel?" she asked. I watched Miranda disappear through the coffee shop door, probably for the last time. I feel like I finally got the last word. 3 months later, Miranda was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Greg got 5 years for his various crimes, most of which were discovered during the investigation into Miranda's activities. Frankie got probation and community service. I got my life back. I moved out of the studio apartment and bought a small house on the west side of Cleveland. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and it didn't have any memories of Miranda attached to it. Ronnie helped me move, just like he'd helped me move out of the studio. "So what's next?" he asked, cracking open a beer on my new back porch. "I'm thinking about changing careers. Maybe becoming a private investigator." "You'd be good at it. You've got the right kind of suspicious mind. I learned from the best teachers, a cheating wife and a crooked businessman." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the city. "Any regrets?" Ronnie asked finally. I thought about it. Did I regret the months of planning? The elaborate con? The satisfaction of watching Miranda's face when she realized she'd been beaten? "No," I said. "No regrets at all. Because sometimes, when someone tries to write you out of your own story, the only thing you can do is pick up the pen and write a better ending. And I'd written a hell of an ending. 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 an ending, an ending, an ending.